Greetings from Tegucigalpa, Honduras, where I'm going to be speaking on Friday at an event and also meeting with partners and new potential clients while I'm down here. So, very excited, appreciate your time. I have a lot of information in today, so I'm going to do my best between speaking slowly enough that hopefully you can understand me and not motoring through. But there are times I'm going to balance that by going a little bit more quickly just to make sure we get through some information. Some questions that have come up in the chat. While this is not being recorded, these presentations, these slides will be available to you. So both my slides and Marina's or a version of Marina's will be able to get out to you. So background on me, Diego shared that some of that information already, but I've been doing this since 2001. Speak all around the world about digital marketing, about export marketing. And so really happy to share with you some information. I will tell you right now that today in 2025, it feels very much like when I started in 2001. So it feels like the wild, wild west with how AI is changing everything. So we'll talk through what some of that is going to look like, how you can leverage that for your business. But that's great news from my perspective. As long as you're not nailed down to doing things exactly the same way you've always done them, you have an opportunity to get ahead while everybody's trying to figure out this landscape. More background on our company. Marina had mentioned it, Diego had mentioned, we are a member of Google's International Growth Agency program. So that's available for less than 1% of all agencies they work with in the United States. And we exist specifically to help exporters. So how do we help companies export overseas? Now, we also work with a lot of US companies. We help them just in the United States, but we're also very proud of our relationship, our strategic partnership with the International Trade Administration. And over the years, just as background, we've helped clients in 29 different countries, 6 continents, sell into over 150 countries around the world. So we're very experienced in this. We were happy to bring to you our experience of what works and what doesn't work. We will share more information about this, but if you want to, anybody's interested, again, we'll share this QR code at the end of the presentation if you want to wait and see what I have to say first. But if you click on that, that will take you to a link where you can get a free global visibility audit. So we go pretty in depth. We're going to ask you just for one country and one language to start off, to start the conversation, but we'll tell you what you look like in that country. How are you showing up currently? We'll show you what a little bit of that competition looks like. So you could choose a country where you're already exporting, or you can choose a country where maybe you're thinking about exporting in the future. And we'll give you some of that background information to help you make your decisions. We'll talk about 2 primary things, 2 primary ways that you can go after using search engines and also using AI, both with Google Gemini and other sources like ChatGPT. We'll talk about ways that you can reach new clients in new markets. Again, whether it's an existing market or a new market you're going to. So the very first thing we're going to talk about is what's best for the short term. And that best thing in the short term is going to be Google Ads. So why do we care about Google Ads? Well, unlike all other forms of advertising, it allows us to reach people when they have the highest intent, right when they're searching, right when they're doing their research. We can reach those people. We can choose what geography we want to go after. We can choose things like time of day, day of week, and ultimately we get all sorts of data back to determine whether these efforts were successful or not. So if you want to reach people, whether you're selling products, whether you're selling services, I know we had some questions in the chat earlier about lead gen. If you hear Marina or me say lead gen or demand gen, we simply mean how are you trying to drive leads to yourself, whether that's for prospects, whether that's for distributors, whether that's for partners that you'll be working with overseas, where you're trying to collect their information through a form, through a phone call, through a WhatsApp, through an email. That's what we mean by lead generation. And the reason we distinguish that is on the e-commerce side of things. And I know in our industry, we use these terms interchangeably sometimes, but for us, e-commerce means where we're selling directly on your website. So everything we're going to talk about today, while the tactics might be a little bit different, all of it applies both to e-commerce direct website sales as well as lead generation efforts. The good news is Google's the most popular search engine all over the world with very, very, very few exceptions. So even we have Czechia up here as part of that. They're still number 1 in that market. But really the main differences are China, Japan, Korea, and Russia, and Taiwan. So if you're not trying to go into those countries, Google's number 1. You can serve the entire world with that. And even in those countries, with the exception of China, you can still get coverage with Google. So if you're looking to shrink your universe, have one platform that can be a great way to reach people with intent, Google's going to be the way to go with a Google Ads platform. Again, if you're interested in China, you're going to look at Baidu, you're going to look at Cesnam, 360, some of those engines, but everywhere else we can get great coverage with Google. You may be hearing things and reading in the news. We can't get away from AI. I think the last conference I went to had no less than 3 or 4 separate breakout sessions on AI. Yes, AI is coming. You might see headlines like this: Google's search market share dropping below 90% for the first time since 2015. That's true. You might see some of these things where talking about the rise of alternative search engines. So we are seeing Bing get picked up more. You are seeing Yandex over in Russia getting picked up more. And you're also seeing ChatGPT. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit more about that, and other engines like it, like Perplexity, like Copilot. And then you're also seeing user-generated content sites like YouTube. Great news, as Marina mentioned, Google owns that. And you're seeing Reddit, which Google loves to influence its search results, and TikTok and some of those other sites. So those are gaining prevalence. So we look at it, Google's dropping a little bit, but they still have 89% of the market share. So if we're looking at 2025, we're looking at 2026, Google's still going to be the best place to be. I think you should be exploring some of those other arenas. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But Google, number one way to reach people right now, both with advertising and we'll talk about within their natural results. You see the stat there, still 373 times bigger than ChatGPT. So yes, ChatGPT is coming, but Google has a sizable lead. If you are interested, you want to dive into AI visibility, there's a link there at the bottom. You can see my face might be covering it up a little bit, but it's directom.com/AI /world, or excuse me, dash world, AI dash world. And if you go there or just get to our website, it's pretty easy to navigate to. You can see a whole webinar. That was another one that we put on with Google. It's all about AI's role in today's marketplace. So if you're thinking about how do we choose keywords, one of the best places to start is with Google's own tool. So if you create a free account with Google Ads, you don't even have to actually run it. You do have to put in a credit card, but once you sign up and create that free account, you get access to their keyword planner. This is an amazing tool. You can start to choose keywords and phrases that you think you should show up on, either in the United States or abroad, or you can put in your website, or you can even put in a competitor's website. And then Google is going to start giving you a lot of free information to help you choose what are those people searching for, where you should be showing up. And you can see here's just 2 slides or 2 screenshots of information that you get. We tried to pound onto a flat slide. And the one in the upper left-hand corner, that's showing you a breakdown of different countries. So you can say, here are the countries I'm interested in, and it'll tell you how popular are those keyword phrases, how much you might have to pay for them in those countries. And then you can break it down. So the one on the right is from Honduras, and it shows different departments or states that they have here. And you can see the breakdown of where those searches are happening most in those different departments. Again, free tool that you get just within Google Ads. If you are selling e-commerce, and of course, if I'm going to do this, I always like to pimp out Diego's favorite football team as part of this, Talleres. But if you are doing e-commerce, you're selling directly on your website, Google shopping results are amazing. Highly recommend that you look into those. They have really, really high conversion rates, meaning a high percentage of those people that click on the ads will turn into buyers on your website. They see the picture, they see the price right out there. Note that if you want to run these internationally, you do need to have that pricing in the local currency as an option on your website. So if you don't have that in that currency, you can still run Google Ads, but you can't run these shopping ads as part of it. You may also want to look at some other places. You're obviously already familiar with Amazon. One of the companies that's really enormous in Latin America, and we're seeing them grow in popularity outside of Latin America as well. I believe they have some big plans, is Mercado Libre. You want to check these folks out. They're kind of like that Amazon or that eBay of Latin America. They're also a great place for you to do some research. So if you look here, drew some circles on here, you can see how many ratings there are, how many purchases there have been. You can see how many times people are searching for different products. So to help you choose what are some of those phrases, it can also help you choose, hey, which products that I offer. I might offer hundreds or thousands of SKUs, but which ones do we think are appropriate for these different markets? And you can do this on Mercado Libre, and the way they break it down, there's a different Mercado Libre for each country, so you can target to specific markets when you do that research. Landing pages from lead gen. So if you're not selling e-commerce, this is the number one tip that I can give you is rather than just send people into your website, you want to create a separate landing page as part of what you're doing. So it allows you to provide incentive, because really what you're trying to do is make it so that people really, really, really want to reach out to you, and you want to reduce that barrier for them to do so. So in other words, if I tell you and you believe me that I'm going to send a Brinks truck full of gold bars to your house, you'll give me your kids' social security numbers. But most people don't have something that valuable to offer. So we want to make sure we're trying to make it so that they're really interested in what we're offering, but don't ask for a lot of information. Don't ask for a million form fields for them to fill out. Just get the basics, their name, their email address, their company, their phone. That's it from a maximum standpoint. Your sales folks can qualify them afterwards. Also really important, and this goes not just for landing pages, but for websites, is establishing your credibility. It can be a little hard to see on the screen because it's small. Again, you'll get this deck afterwards, but you can see in a very, very short period of time, we used one of our pages as an example. You can see partner logos we have at the top, followed by client logos, examples of other companies we've worked with, followed by testimonials with pictures and names and companies, followed by why we say we're different and what the benefits are of working with us, followed by stats. So you can do this type of information. Highly, highly encourage you to do this. You're talking with companies where they may be much, much more comfortable working with somebody locally. So what can you do to get them over the hump of working with someone that might be 2,000, 5,000, 8,000 miles away? You need to establish that credibility on your website. So as many of these types of things that you can get on there, videos, testimonials, those types of things will all make it more likely that that person is going to fill out a form, check a WhatsApp, something like that to be able to reach out to you. From an PPC exporting tip, so an advertising export tips, what are some of the things you can do? You can target different countries very quickly, very inexpensively to see what works. You can group those companies together if you're not sure what exact country you want to go after. Just make sure that you're grouping those countries by their languages. So we don't want to see Brazil mixed in with Mexico, mixed in with Japan. Make sure that you're breaking those apart. You can try advertising with your information in English. English in many cases is still the preferred business language. Just make sure that if you have an English ad that takes people to a landing page that's in English. What you don't want to do, for example, is, and I've seen this too often, where you might write your ad in Spanish, but then you send somebody to an English landing page. That's too much friction. Those people are going to bounce. Make sure those two components really match up with what you're doing. If you don't have a full website in that translated language, you can create one landing page that does have that language. Just make sure you can handle the inquiry because it's going to come in to you in that language. And ChatGPT can be your friend. You can reply back to them with ChatGPT. We can talk about some tools you can use to make your life easier with communication. But ultimately, if you're going to have that conversation, you need to make sure when it moves to that stage that you can hold that in their language where they're comfortable. And Marina already talked about how do you choose what some of those most important elements of your website are that you want to translate. All right, that's the Google Ads side. So very quick results that we can get. We'll talk now about search engine optimization. We'll talk about generative engine optimization. That's a newer term for many people. And how are those ways that you can leverage the search engines, leverage the chat engines for getting that visibility. These are things that are going to greatly help your credibility. They are going to drive business to you, but they are not the short term. So these are going to be midterm and long-term impacts that you're going to have. So why do we care? Like with Google Ads, we're reaching people when they have the highest intent. But with ads, you can have ads up this afternoon. I wouldn't recommend that. I'd want you to put a little more thought into it, but you could easily have ads up next week as part of what you're doing. With search engine optimization, it's going to take you a little bit longer to rise up those results. One of the biggest benefits of search engines is that and when you show up in the organic results, so the non-ad results are called organic results. When you show up in those organic results, is that you're getting legitimacy. And what I always worry about, if you're not showing up there, and that's how people are searching you out, maybe you met with them, maybe it was a networking event. Well, a lot of times you do this before you reach out to them, you're going to go back and do some research. And if they're not showing up when someone's doing that search, they're going to start to question how big, how true, how credible, how legitimate of a business you are. So think about it not just from a driving business standpoint, from a driving leads or an e-commerce sale directly, but how is that helping you move people through the funnel that you've already contacted, that you've already spoken with? How it works, Google has a giant formula. They call it an algorithm. They change it hundreds of times a year. So more than once per day, they're making changes to this algorithm. But how does it work? A couple things to keep in mind. Number one, everything is keyword based. So you might say, I want to show up for everything. Well, that's great, but you can only show up for 1 to 2 keyword phrases per page as a general rule. So the more phrases you want to show up for, the more quality content you need to have on your website. And we think about that algorithm itself. There's 2 main factors. I like to think of them as authority. So do you know what you're talking about? And that's based primarily about things that happen on your website. So the content that's on there, is it a good user experience? Are there a bunch of broken links? But if it was only about that, then it would be really easy to game Google's system. So they're looking for outside verification that you're a credible company. So for that credibility factors, they're checking about how you're talked about offsite. So any places, if there's a newspaper that mentions you, and especially anytime that you have links from another website. So somewhere where a person can click on a link on that website and be taken back to your website, that's in effect that company vouching for you as a good source of information. So if we want to be successful in SEO, we need to work on both of these factors. When you think about content and how you can rank, and this would go for search engines, this would go for places like ChatGPT, what are those things you need to talk about? We list 3 here: authority, experience, and relevance. So relevance, making sure that you can talk about the things that they care about. And then the experience and the authority is not just showing that expertise in what you're writing, but you also need to talk about why you're a credible source of information. So if it's a blog post especially, make sure you're putting who the author is. Don't just put site admin. List who wrote it and list what their credentials are. Maybe other things they've written. Where did they go to school? How long have they been in the business? Did they author other papers? Even if you're having a ghostwriter, somebody that's working with it, have that named expert in your organization be the author of it and list all that information so that users in Google and chat engines like ChatGPT can all trust you. Because at the end of the day, that's what Google's trying to do. They're trying to replicate the user experience. So give you great information, to reward you for great information presented in a way that users care about. All right. We like the rules of 3. So when we think about how do we choose what keyword phrases we want to go after, again, just like with Google Ads, we can start with a Google keyword planner to give us ideas of what keywords to go after. Think of those keywords in 3 different buckets. First bucket is no. So that's where people are searching for informational intent. And this was really great for you a few years ago. If you look now, a lot of times Google is putting its own, what it calls AI overviews. It's Google Gemini results at the top of the page. So those click-through rates, even if you're ranking number 1 in organic results, have gone down dramatically. So we don't want to focus on those informational or no moments. The next one are go moments. This is where people are, in effect, using for Google as an easier way to navigate information on your website. So maybe not even sure where to go, and maybe it's not looking for you directly, but it's looking for something that you offer. So the examples we show here are like Amazon shipping policy, Google Slides, Vandy financial aid office address. It's trying to find that information. These may work for you, they may not. They're going to be challenging, but they're not necessarily going to drive a lot of business in most cases. So it's that third category that we want to focus on. So what are those do movements? I wish we pronounced it do so that we could have all three rhyme, but alas, we're going to call them do movements or moments. And that means there's either commercial or there's a transactional intent. Either way, it means that this person is looking to make an action after they get this information. They ultimately want to buy something. So examples we have here: the price of a wedding dress, robotic training near me, best above ground pools. These are all the types of searches that are going to put money in your pocket. So these do moments, those are the keyword phrases we want to go after. So how do we do that? Once we do our research, and you can use those tools from Google, we will use those. Our agency uses some other ones as well. If you have an account with SEMrush, for example, this would be another place where you can pull some information. And you can prioritize those keyword phrases that have those commercial or transactional intents behind them. And then you can sort by how often they're being searched for. There's some other formulas we can get into if you really have questions about this at the end. We can get really far in the weeds. But at the end of the day, you're going to find those do keywords that you want to go after. These are the ones that are going to make you money. And I would encourage you to look at intent behind them, even more so than the total volume of searches. So sometimes marketers will say, hey, look at all this traffic I drove to your website. And there's value to that traffic, but at the end of the day, you can't take a piece of traffic down to the bank and cash it in. So we're looking for that traffic that's going to convert into something meaningful for you. All right. I kind of foreshadowed it a little bit. We're talking about SEO, search engine optimization. We're also talking about generative engine optimization. So this is where the market is heading. That means, how do you show up in Google's AI overviews results? It means, how can you show up in ChatGPT results, in Perplexity, in Copilot, in Claude, all of these different places, whichever different AI engines, you'll find out which ones are most important to you. We're going to talk about a few of those ways that you can leverage what you're doing for SEO also for GEO. Because the good news is about 70% roughly of your efforts for search engine optimization can also help you with GEO. But we're going to give you a couple tips how you can especially optimize for those generative engines. So from a display advertising perspective, really, really important to GEO. So a lot of times historically, people have thought of, okay, I'm going to do search engine optimization and or I'm going to do Google Ads, and never the twain shall meet, because Google Ads don't necessarily, and they don't directly at all impact your SEO results. When you're trying to optimize for GEO, we're going to recommend highly, heavily advertising in Google Ads with the display advertising. The good news is very inexpensive. It's a great way for you to reach people with video or with imagery. Get your name known more, get your name talked about more, and this is going to support all of your efforts. So if you care about showing up in Google AIO, if you care about showing up in ChatGPT, display advertising can help you. And since we're talking about exporting, this is a great way to build up your name where nobody knows who you are if this is a new market for you. So if you want to start getting known, make sure that you're doing this type of advertising. And Marie and I can give you more information in the session afterwards, but highly recommend this to help all of your other efforts. The good news is, like from a background perspective, we've known AI is coming for a long time as an agency. It's not been a surprise. So we've been experimenting with it for a long time. We just released our services for GEO about a month ago. And part of it was we needed to take a year to be able to find out what works and what doesn't work. And it is changing rapidly. But we finally have some services that we feel very confident in. But the other part of it was, even if we're driving results, how can we prove it? How can we show that your money is being invested wisely? So if you are doing this, the good news is you can now find out what's working and what's not working, and you can get this information. Some of it will come in Google Analytics if you're doing it on your own. We have some other tools that we use as part of it. But at the end of the day, you can get this information to be able to show the C-suite, your bosses, or just yourself, that what's working is happening. And you can get that breakdown of, hey, how much of my traffic is coming from ChatGPT versus Claude versus Perplexity versus Gemini. For exporting for SEO, a couple tips. Number one, this is kind of your Monopoly Go, do not pass go moment. Decide on the structure. So do you want to have a separate website? Do you want to have a subdomain or a subdirectory? Happy to go into more details about this. You can also use Google Search Console. Highly recommend that. That's a free tool. And you can use that to help Google understand which market are you targeting with which particular part of your website. You can also use some markup language called hreflang, for example, to tell Google and the other search engines. All right, last section we're moving into, and then we're going to get into Q&A, some different tips and tools for everybody. Number one, most important thing when you're thinking about your website is the translation piece. So you want to not just translate, but you want to localize whenever possible. Use that professional translation. When you localize, just as an example here with tires, you can see llantas in Colombia, Mexico, and Peru, but cubiertas in Argentina and Uruguay, cauchos in Venezuela, that's the only country that uses that term, and then pneumáticos in Chile and Spain is part of this. Diego is crushed at my horrible accent. I apologize for my pronunciation, but the point is you're going to look at different ways people use tires in these different markets, and the only way you're going to get that information is with proper translation and localization. The second most important thing, site speed matters. Speed kills. When you see this chart here, this is talking about average conversion rates. So conversion rate is what percentage of the people take that action you want, filling out a form, making a purchase, looking up directions to your site, whatever's most important to you. Let's look at the first and third lines. Across industries, across goal types. If your page loads in 2.4 seconds, on average, sites see a 1.9% conversion rate. Drop down 2 lines. If it loads 4.2 seconds, that doesn't seem that much longer. That conversion rate drops to less than 1%. So fewer than half of the same people that were converting on your site are going to convert because everything is loading more slowly. And keep in mind that when when people are looking in those foreign markets, they may not have the same broadband that you do in the US. They may be, most likely, are on their mobile device and may not have great coverage. So one of the results that Google came out with before, 48% of people, nearly half of all people, if they come to your website on mobile and they can't find what they're looking for quickly, they will leave and they will never return to your website. And you work so hard to get them there in the first place. So make sure we have a great website experience for them. Free tool here. This is Google PageSpeed Insights. You can run it on your website. It'll tell you how you're loading on mobile, how you're loading on desktop. The score I will have you pay the most attention to is the largest contentful paint. It's a little hard to see on these slides, but when you run your website on there, you'll be able to see it. You want that number as a benchmark to be 2.5 seconds or less. So if you're, in this case, seeing 19.5 seconds on mobile, way, way, way too high. So we want to be at 2.5 seconds or less for how long that largest element of your page can take to load. We talked about mobile. Marina talked about it as well. Beyond just people leaving your website, understand that 3/4 of purchases that happen online are happening on multiple devices. They're not happening in that single session. So even if you're looking at your website and you're seeing a high percentage of people buying on desktop, they, in all likelihood, would have searched on tablet or mobile first. So make sure you have a great experience in all of those cases for them. Make sure also you're checking out your analytics. They'll tell you a breakdown of people, how they visited you by country, by city, by department. I love this for seeing traffic sources, what marketing efforts are being most impactful for you. I love seeing it from an engagement standpoint geographically. So what's getting you traffic? Where are those conversions happening? And also, if you're going on a trade mission, do you see those people, they're looking at you and checking you out before and after you go? Run test campaigns before you travel. This is a great way to drive some leads to your website before you have meetings. You can turn those over to your amazing friends at the U.S. Commercial Service. They can vet those for you as they're setting up meetings. So it's a great way to test that market very, very inexpensively. This is the tool that the U.S. Commercial Service puts out that nobody ever talks about. It's one of my favorite tools there. So it's their market diversification tool. If you do a search for International Trade Administration market diversification tool, the URLs here at the bottom as well. That'll be in the slides that you get. Um, you can put in your NAICS codes, and it'll tell you how popular that product is in those engines. We also have some special tools because of a relationship with Google where we can look from a search perspective how popular those products are in those markets. We're happy to share those with you if we're working with you. But this is a great self-serve tool you can use on your own. Last thing on the U.S. Commercial Service. First, I don't know how, but as you can see from the pictures here, they only hire the very best looking people to work for them. In addition to being very good looking, they're also extremely capable with what they do. So Diego, for example, is my point of contact. And then I put Alina up here from Romania. She had helped us on a TradeWinds mission before. When you use U.S. Commercial Service, especially for gold key services, especially for trade missions that happen overseas, they will put you in front of companies that you would otherwise never get a meeting with, especially if you're a small or medium-sized business. Cannot recommend these trade missions highly enough. In Romania, mentioned here, we got in front of a large global cybersecurity company that we would have never gotten in from. Last thing I'll mention, you see that $460 number there. That is the return on investment that the U.S. Commercial Service provides U.S. taxpayers. It is the single best return on investment I've ever seen anywhere. And they are, as always, the government wants to make sure that their dollars are being used wisely. Please, please, please talk to your representatives. I'm not a lobbyist. I don't want to do that. I just want to run my company. But I spend time in Washington, D.C. talking about how amazing the U.S. Commercial Service is because selfishly, I don't want this great resource to go away, in addition to them just being awesome.